I know you've heard this before that men need to be more vulnerable. But if you're like most men I work with, the first thing that comes to your mind is, well, yeah, but what the hell does that mean really? So vulnerability has been so overused, misused, and flat out twisted in modern culture that most men either avoid it completely or they do it in a way that destroys their respect and relationships. Hey man, I'm Kyle. I'm a certified master NLP practitioner and a certified master success coach for men who are tired of performing and ready to start leading their life from grounded masculine energy. And just for you watching this today, I have put free resources in the description below for you to get for yourself and to start making these changes. And when would now be a good time to do that? So today I'm going to share four ways that you can use for yourself and really your hesitation about being vulnerable. I want you to change this misconception that you have around vulnerability. I'm not here to tell you to, just open up or share your feelings more. I'm going to show you what vulnerability actually looks like for a man. What it looks like for a man, who leads, a man who protects, a man who doesn't collapse under pressure, but also a man that doesn't wear a mask that slowly kills him inside, like really it used to do to me. So, the problem with how men see vulnerability, right? So, this is when most guys hear the word vulnerable and think weak. I know that's what you're thinking because that's what I used to think it meant, right? You picture someone crying on social media, oversharing every struggle, or emotionally dumping on a partner. And because that image feels like it strips away your strength, you just shut the door completely. But here's the reality. What we call vulnerability today in pop culture, that's not really vulnerability. It's unfiltered emotional spilling without direction, without leadership, without ownership. That's not vulnerability. That's emotional chaos. And just so we're clear, the other extreme isn't the answer either. So, like hiding everything, locking it inside, pretending that you're fine when you're dying on the inside, that's not strength. That's emotional cowardice dressed up as masculinity. But real vulnerability is something entirely different. So let's look at the historical truth about vulnerability. So let's take a trip back, okay? I'm talking about let's go way back. Think like ancient Sparta. Think samurais in Japan. Think of the early Roman legions, right? Now, do you think those warriors, leaders, and emperors just, shared their feelings with anyone at any time? No. But they did have a code. Yeah, they did. They had councils, they had brotherhoods, and rituals where they spoke truth without fear. See, they understood something that most modern men have forgotten. Vulnerability isn't about telling the world everything, it's about having the courage to be seen fully by the people who have earned that right. So, like when Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations, right? He wasn't posting them for likes. Those were his private reflections. They were raw, honest, and unfiltered. He did this so he could lead himself first before leading Rome. When samurais sat in council, they would admit fear before battle. Not so they, could spiral into fear, but so they could face it, master it, and really move forward with clarity. Vulnerability wasn't weakness. It was a tool for sharpening the blade. So why do most men avoid it, right? So for most men today, avoiding vulnerability isn't, just a habit. It's survival programming. As boys, we were taught early, don't cry, man up. Nobody cares about your feelings. Get it together. And while resilience is vital, What actually happened is that we learned that, showing anything real would get us shame, mocked, or ignored. So we built armor. And even though it wasn't the best thing for us to do, you have to understand that anyone at any given time can only do their best with the resources that they have available to them. This doesn't mean that you're, given a pass for doing something wrong. It means that, you know, we can all look at your choice and see why you chose that way with the resources that you had available to you. The problem with this is that, that armor doesn't just keep the world out, but it keeps us locked inside. We get stuck in our own head, disconnected, from our partner, our kids, our friends, even from our own damn self, right? So here's the cost of never being vulnerable. So let me paint you a picture, right? You're in a relationship, things feel fine, but she's pulling away. She doesn't, she doesn't say, really much anything to you. She doesn't feel close to you anymore. And you don't get it, right? You're providing, you're showing up, you're doing everything right. But here's what she's feeling. She can't feel you. She sees the mask. She sees the I've got this face, but she doesn't see you, the real you, the man beneath the mask. And really without that, she can't trust you, at least not fully. Because trust isn't just about protection, it's about connection. Without vulnerability, your relationships become transactions. They function, but they don't thrive. And really, one day you're going to wake up next to someone who doesn't really know you. So what does real vulnerability look like? All right. So most men have been sold two extremes when it comes to vulnerability. Either you bottle everything up and become the stonewall guy who never lets anyone in, or you overshare every detail of your struggle in a way that makes you feel weak, needy, or exposed. Now, neither one is real grounded masculine vulnerability. So let's cut through the noise here. You know, what it actually looks like, in practice is something like this. And if you start to do this in your relationships and your reputation and your self-respect, all that will change. So the first thing you have to do is you have to have ownership before blame. So real vulnerability starts with leadership, and leadership starts with ownership. Most men deflect or point the finger first because it feels safer to kind of push that heat away, right? The problem is when you do that, you're telling the other person that I'm not safe to be honest with. Instead, own your part before you go, anywhere else. You can say something like, I can see where I shut down in that conversation and I don't want to keep doing that. Now, this isn't about groveling or beating yourself up. It's about being strong enough to face your reflection before pointing your finger at someone else. So, a historical example of this is, Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher. He wrote in his meditations about reviewing his own faults before judging others. Even as the most powerful man in Rome, he kept himself in check. First because, trust starts with self accountability. So, a modern day example of this is, look at Dwayne The Rock Johnson. He's talked openly about moments where he's failed in relationships and business, taking ownership without hiding behind his success. That kind of self leadership has made him one of the most trusted public figures today. And when you lead like this, you send the message I hold myself to the same standard I expect from you. The second thing is to, uh, revealing your truth without collapsing, right? So vulnerability isn't just, dumping your emotional backpack onto someone else's shoulders. If you tell your woman, your brother or, your business partner, I'm under pressure right now and I could use your support, you're not asking them to, to carry you. You're inviting them to walk with you. You're also being transparent, which just deepens their trust for you and in you. Collapsing says, like, I can't handle this unless you fix it. Grounded vulnerability says, I'm handling this and I'd value having you alongside me. So, think samurai warriors in feudal Japan trained for stillness under pressure. They could share their concerns with trusted allies without, leaking fear into the group. Vulnerability didn't mean giving up command. It meant inviting collaboration while holding the final responsibility. Look at LeBron James. He's been open about seeking help from mental performance coaches during high pressure seasons. He doesn't hide it. He uses it to sharpen his game while staying the leader of his team. Like LeBron James has a coach. That's strength, not weakness. Hey, just a brief interruption from your video to tell you about an exceptional opportunity. You keep saying that you're ready to change, but let me ask you, what's actually changing? Because reading more books and setting more goals doesn't mean anything when your core identity is stuck in the same cycle. The real reason you can't move forward isn't because of lack of discipline or motivation. It's the loop that you're in. It's the beliefs that run your decisions before you even realize it. That's why I created the foundation, a free masterclass that shows you how to break that loop. I identify exactly how the loop operates, and it's broken down in a way that you probably have never heard of before. I also explain how to rewire your loop for success. This is not a lecture. It's not theory. It's the start of you finally understanding why you feel stuck and what you can do about it. Inside, you'll learn how to spot the thoughts that sabotage you, shift the identity underneath your patterns, and anchor new beliefs that actually support who you're becoming. You've tried forcing change. Now it's time to naturally become the change. Link is in the description for this absolutely free download of the foundation. Let's start your shift today. And now, back to our video. And the final one is letting yourself be seen in your process. So this is where most men struggle. They think that they can only speak up once they've, figured it all out. So they disappear. They pull away. They put the mask on of I'm fine until they either blow up or burn out. But you don't need to have every answer to be real. You can say, something like, I'm still figuring this out, but I wanted to share where I'm at with you. Again, transparency. That's not exposing every raw nerve. It's allowing, that real connection with the man you actually are right now, not the perfected image that you want to project. All right. So Winston Churchill, okay, during World War II, told the public the exact truth about the challenges ahead while still holding his vision for victory. He let people see him in the middle of the process, which built trust and confidence in his leadership instead of eroding it. Look at Matthew McConaughey. He's shared publicly about times in his career where he didn't know, the next step to take. He didn't hide until it was all solved. He invited others with him on the journey, which only strengthened his influence. So when you practice vulnerability like this, you're not losing power, you're gaining it because you're no longer living behind a wall. You're no longer waiting for people to guess what's going on with you. And you're no longer hiding from your own truth. See, most men think the wall keeps them safe, it keeps them alone. It keeps their partner at a distance. It keeps their friends from fully trusting them. And really, it keeps them from trusting themselves. Grounded vulnerability stops that cycle. It's it's not about softening into weakness. It's about standing so firm in who you are that you can be seen without losing your footing. And really, when you mastered that, respect flows toward you naturally. Not because you've performed your way into it, but because people trust a man who trusts himself enough to be real. So the boundaries of vulnerability. Now, here's the part that most people won't tell you. And honestly, it's why a lot of men get this part wrong. So vulnerability without boundaries is, just like emotional dumping. You don't share everything with everyone. You know, you don't put your pain onto people who aren't equipped to hold it. So you build an inner circle of brothers, mentors, coaches, and your partner if the trust is there and if they actually get the full truth. The rest of the world, they get the parts that are useful, that serve a purpose, that align with your leadership. Vulnerability is strength because it takes more strength to stand in your truth than to hide behind a mask. It takes more discipline to reveal the wound and do the work to heal it than to pretend that you're unshakable while really you're falling apart inside. Vulnerability is strength when it's paired with action. It's not just feeling, it's leading through the feeling. That's the difference between, just bleeding out and showing the scar. One drains, everyone around you. The other inspires them to face their own battles. So if you've, been living, walled off for years, maybe even decades, the idea of being vulnerable can really feel impossible. You've trained yourself to keep everything behind a mask. You've gotten good at smiling when you're not okay, at talking about surface level stuff while burying the truth, just under miles of concrete inside of you. The problem is that wall that once kept you safe is now keeping you stuck. It's the reason you feel disconnected in your relationships. It's why people, can be around you physically, but, still feel like they really, don't know you. And it's why you can't fully trust anyone because you're not letting anyone see the real you. So, where do you start? Right? Where do you start? The first thing, and I've spoken about this before, but really the first thing to starting all of this is to tell the truth to yourself first. So before you open your mouth to anyone else, you have to stop lying to yourself. Now that might sound harsh, but most men have been doing it for years, right? Maybe even yourself. You tell yourself that you're fine when you're not. You justify relationships or jobs that drain you. You downplay how much something is hurting you because it's not that bad, right? It's not that bad. Being real with yourself is the first and really the hardest step. Write it down, say it out loud when no one's around. Look yourself in the mirror and admit it. You know, admit this is where I'm at. This is what I've been avoiding. And this is the truth about my life right now. And really, the key to doing this is to do it without judgment. This is not about shaming yourself into change. It's about seeing yourself clearly so, you have something real to work with. Because you cannot be authentic with anyone else until you're authentic with yourself first. So the next one is to choose one person to practice with. All right. So when men first decide to open up, they often go too big too fast, right? They just dump everything on social media or they unload on people that, they barely know. That's not vulnerability. That's emotional exposure without safety. Start with one person, one friend, a fellow brother, a mentor, or a coach that you actually trust. Someone who is not only going to hold space for you, but who also understands, what you're going through because they have been through it themselves. Someone you've seen handle the truth without running, gossiping or judging. And that small start, you don't need to unpack your deepest wounds on day one, but you might say something, simple like, hey, I've been feeling stressed lately and I want to talk about it. It's not about the size of what you share. It's about building the muscle of letting someone in. All right. So it's just like, if you haven't been to the gym in a while or ever, do you go in there and start benching, 300 or 400 pounds? No. You start with something small. You build up to it. That's what this is. Start with something small. Okay. Then once you do that, you need to stay regulated when you share. Now, this is where most men mess it up. They treat vulnerability like, like ripping off a band-aid. They just let me do it fast. Rip it off. They rush through it just to like get it over with. But when you do that, you're not actually present. You're still protecting yourself from the discomfort instead of, standing in it. So slow down, breathe. If your voice shakes, let it. That's just your body releasing the tension and, getting the energy off of it. The goal isn't to get through it, you know, in like an instant, right? It's to be in the moment. Okay? And really when you're in that moment, it's really to share without collapsing, without exploding, and really without shutting down like halfway through. Because when you can hold your center while you're open, that's where trust is built, you know? And finally, you need to pair it with action. So this one is huge, okay? Especially if you want to maintain respect in your relationships. Vulnerability without action turns into, just venting. It can make people start to see you as someone who talks about problems but doesn't do anything about them. So it's like when I was told, like as a kid growing up, if you're talking about something, you better have, you know, something figured out or have a reason to talk about it because otherwise you're just complaining. So talking about something without having a solution is just complaining. And nobody wants to listen to somebody complain. So if you share a struggle, follow it with, here's what I'm going to do about it, right? Or here's what I'm thinking about doing. So an example, that comes to mind is, work has been heavy lately and I've noticed it's been affecting my mood. I've started doing breath work before I get home so I can be more present. So you're not dumping your burden on them. You're letting them see where you're at and you're showing them that you're leading yourself through it. Here's what most men don't realize until they start practicing this. Vulnerability done right doesn't make people lose respect for you. It actually makes them trust you more because they see you as a man who can tell the truth, a man who can stay steady under emotional weight, a man that takes responsibility for his own growth and actions. That's the kind of man that women feel safe with. That's the kind of man that other men respect. And really that's the kind of man that can lead, his family, a team, or a mission without burning himself out or losing himself completely. So here's what you need to understand. The men who lead in their relationships, in their businesses, and their lives are the men who are truly magnetic, not the ones hiding behind a mask. They're the ones who can take that mask off without falling apart. And if you've been feeling like you've been performing instead of living, like nobody knows really who you are anymore, like you can't even remember the last time you fully felt seen, then it's time to reclaim the courage to be vulnerable and do it in the right way. Because when you do, your relationships deepen, your leadership sharpens, and you finally stop living like the stranger in your own life. So if this landed with you, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, and share it with a fellow brother that might need to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you're notified whenever I release a new video. I also have free resources below that will help you start rebuilding from the inside out. Tools that work, built for men just like you. So hit subscribe for yourself, grab the tools, and reach out. Give me a follow too on social media. Links are in the description. Remember, you're not broken, you're becoming. I'll see you on the next video. Stay strong, brother.